You ever watched someone beg for the version of you they helped destroy? Huh. Poetic, isn't it? They play with you, break you, twist your heart into knots, and then, when you finally snap and build yourself into something colder, smarter, untouchable, they start crying about how you've changed. Of course you changed. They didn't leave you with a damn choice. And now they miss a ghost. The old you, dead, gone, not coming back. They miss the version of you that no longer exists. And they're the reason it disappeared in the first place. You see, people don't appreciate what they have while it's breathing. They only cry at funerals, and that's what you gave them, a funeral in silence. You buried your love, your softness, your forgiveness 6 feet deep. And now you walk with a new kind of silence, the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't wait. And that's the silence that haunts them. That's the silence they didn't expect. Because you were always the one who cared too much, weren't you? The one who forgave before the apology, who stayed when you should have left, who gave when you were empty. And what did they do? They laughed. They mocked your patience. They drank from your cup while it bled. And now that your cup's dry and your door's closed, they knock, with regret in their eyes and silence in their throats. Funny, isn't it? How people fear the monster they created. How they run from the cold they birthed with their own betrayal. They want the warm version back, the one that smiled despite the cuts. But that version? You killed it the night they pretended your pain was a joke. You buried it the moment you realized your worth was being sold for their convenience. And now they get to live with the echo of what they lost. And it screams louder every time you don't answer. And let me explain something to you, and listen real close, because this ain't some pretty little quote for your Instagram story. This is real. People don't change for love. They change for consequences. You could give someone your world, wrap it up with gold, and they'll still find a reason to spit on it. But the moment you stop showing up, the moment your voice becomes a stranger, that's when it hits. That's when their stomach drops. Because they never believed you'd walk. They thought you were permanent. They thought no matter how much they bruised your heart, you'd stay. And that illusion, that's what broke them. Not your silence, their expectation of your forever. They underestimated your limit, and now they drown in the reality of it. They'll say you switched up. They'll say you changed. They'll whisper your name like it's a curse now. Good. Let them. Let them spread stories about how cold you became. Because they'll never tell the truth. They'll never admit why. They'll never say, I broke them. They'll never confess to the nights you cried for their attention, to the mornings you waited for their effort. No, they'll just act confused, like victims of a storm they started. And you don't owe them a weather report. Let them stand in the rain. You see, pain teaches you something no love ever will. It teaches you clarity. And clarity, it's a cold teacher, but an honest one. It strips the noise. It shows you who clapped for you in private and who celebrated your wounds. It shows you who used your kindness as a leash and who ran the moment you asked to be loved the same way you gave. So now, don't you dare look back. Don't you dare dig up what you buried. Let them live with their echoes. Let them regret the way they chewed through your soul. You're not responsible for the storm they drown in. You gave them sunshine for too damn long. You bled yourself dry for their comfort. And now, you're finally quiet. And your silence, it's the loudest revenge. They'll miss the version of you that smiled through the pain. That version died. Now let the new you live, loudly, ruthlessly, without apology. And don't ever look back. They'll call it attitude. They'll call it ego. They'll say you became heartless. But they'll never mention how they left you for dead emotionally. They won't talk about the hours you spent staring at a screen, waiting for a reply that never came. They won't admit they watched you lose sleep over their silence and still didn't care. Nah. They'll just act shocked when the version of you that once begged for crumbs now walks past them like they don't even exist. But that's the part that hits them hardest. Your indifference, not your hate, not your anger, your silence. Because you can't fake that. Hate is still a form of attention, but silence, that's a whole different graveyard. And once you learn to stop dancing for people who wouldn't even tap their foot for you, you become something they can't control anymore. Something they can't manipulate or guilt trip back into submission. You become a ghost in their story. And ghosts don't apologize. Let me break it down for you. When you were soft, they saw weakness. When you gave endlessly, they saw it as their right. They were never grateful. They were entitled. They thought your love came with no conditions, no boundaries. So they pushed, and you let them, because you thought love meant endurance. You thought being loyal meant being available, even when it was killing you. But they don't understand sacrifice unless they're the ones making it. They don't respect loyalty unless they're the ones demanding it. So when you finally stopped answering, when you finally started saying no, when you finally put yourself first, they called you cold. Number, you're not cold, you're healed. And healing doesn't always look like candles and soft music. Sometimes it looks like blocking numbers, deleting conversations, and walking away without an explanation. Sometimes healing means becoming the villain in someone else's story, just to be the hero in your own. And here's the twisted part. They'll come back. Yeah, they always do. Maybe not with flowers, maybe not with words, but they'll show up again. In your dreams, in your silence, in that song you both used to love. They'll stalk your stories, like your pictures, throw a random "hope you're good" just to reopen that door they slammed in your face. But don't fall for it. That's not love. That's guilt. That's a parasite missing its host. That's someone realizing they had everything and treated it like nothing. So when they try to come back, let them find a version of you they don't recognize. The one who doesn't flinch anymore. The one who doesn't wait, doesn't hope, doesn't explain. Because that version, the old you, is dead. And no amount of their regret is bringing it back. You ever notice how people start appreciating you once you're gone? It's not because they've changed. It's because they lost control. You're not the one who changed. They're just finally seeing the consequences of taking you for granted. They're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry you had the strength to walk away. Sorry you didn't come back like they expected. Sorry they can't guilt you into staying anymore. And that's why they panic. That's why they start playing victim. Because in their world, you were never supposed to be the one who left. You were supposed to be the one always waiting, always available, but not anymore. Now, they have to sit with themselves, with the echo of every message they ignored, with the memory of every time they made you feel small. That's the real pain. They're haunted by the best version of you, and they know it's never coming back. And the best part? You don't even have to do anything. You don't need revenge. You don't need to scream. You just have to keep going, keep building, keep glowing. Because every step you take in silence is a scream they can't ignore. Every win you don't announce eats them alive. Every day you don't call reminds them of what they lost. And let them sit in that. Let them taste the emptiness they created. Because they'll miss the version of you that stayed up all night just to make sure they were okay. They'll miss the version of you that smiled even when you were breaking. They'll miss the version of you that answered texts within seconds, that said yes when everything inside you wanted to say no. That version is gone. And you're never going back to who you had to be just to survive their mistreatment. You're evolving. And evolution isn't comfortable. It's painful. It's lonely. But it's necessary. And now, the only apology you'll ever give is your absence. You know what they never expected? That you'd find peace in the silence. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from their validation or their attention or their half-assed apologies. They thought you'd fall apart without them. That cutting you off, ignoring you, replacing you, would break you. That you'd come crawling back, desperate to be seen again. But instead, you vanished. Not out of weakness, not out of fear. You disappeared out of strength. You didn't block them to hurt them. You blocked them to protect your soul. You didn't go silent because you had nothing to say. You went silent because they didn't deserve to hear your voice anymore. And now, they sit in a world where you don't exist. And it's driving them insane. Because they lost access to a version of you that loved them unconditionally. That gave everything without asking for anything back. And you know the cruel irony? Now that you've changed, now that you've evolved, now they're ready. Now they want to talk. Now they want to fix things. But it's too late, because the person they're begging for doesn't live here anymore. That version of you, the giver, the forgiver, the one who bent over backwards to keep them happy, it died quietly. No funeral, no goodbye. Just a slow death in the middle of a million ignored messages and one-sided conversations and all. And when it finally stopped breathing, you didn't cry. You just stood up, cold, focused, clear. And now they're mourning someone they killed while pretending they didn't know what they were doing. But you knew. You felt every cut. Every little act of disrespect they swore was nothing. Every time they chose someone else over you, every time they left your words unseen, you felt that. You bled. And still, you stayed. Until one day, something inside you snapped. Something said, "No more." And you weren't angry. You weren't loud. You just stopped showing up, stopped explaining, stopped caring. And that's when everything changed. You ever realize how loud your absence is? How powerful it becomes when you go from being everything to being unreachable. That's when they realize the gravity of what they lost. Because they never saw your value while they had it. They only see it now, in the silence, in the space you use to fill with love, loyalty, and understanding. And now that space is empty. Now they sit with the void. They scroll through your old messages, reread the things you used to say when you were still trying, still hoping, still foolish enough to believe they'd change. But those words, they hit different now. They cut them now. Because the person behind those words doesn't exist anymore. And no amount of guilt, regret, or crocodile tears is bringing that soul back. They'll say, "You've changed," and they're right, but they'll never admit why. They'll never say, "I pushed them to the edge." They'll never say, "I made them question their worth." Nah. They'll play dumb. They'll paint you as heartless, as distant, as the problem, because it's easier than facing the truth. The truth that you loved them better than they deserved, that you showed up when everyone else left, that you believed in them when they didn't even believe in themselves, and they took that for granted. They mocked it. So don't feel bad when they finally understand. Don't feel bad when they crumble in your absence. You tried. You gave. You stayed longer than you should have. But now, you're gone. And not just physically. You're gone mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They can't reach you anymore, not because you're hiding, but because you outgrew the cage they kept you in. So let them miss you. Let them regret it. Let them sit in the wreckage of what they destroyed. Because that version of you they cry for now, that version loved without limits. That version believed in people who didn't believe back. That version was gold in the hands of fools. And now, it's gone. And what's left? Someone untouchable. Someone who doesn't beg. Someone who doesn't need to be understood to keep breathing. Someone who understands that sometimes the only closure you need is silence. And your silence? It's poetry. It's power. It's everything they never expected, and everything they now can't live without. Now here's the real kicker. The version of you that used to wait by the phone, check the timestamps, overthink every word, every pause, every shift in their tone, that version, they thought it would always be there. They mistook your patience for permanence. They saw you loving, loud, loyal, vulnerable. And instead of protecting that, they exploited it. Because weak people don't know how to handle strong love. It terrifies them. Your consistency was a mirror to their instability. So they mocked it, laughed behind your back, thought they had you wrapped around their finger, thought you'd never walk away because you kept forgiving what should have ended you. But here's the thing, even angels have breaking points. And when someone like you finally walks, oh, it's not just a step. It's a damn earthquake. Because you don't leave halfway. You leave like you never existed. You cut off the energy, the effort, the loyalty, and all that light you used to pour into their darkness. And they can feel it every single day. They thought you were easy to replace. Cute, right? Thought they could find another you in a week. Someone with your loyalty, your fire, your patience. But what they found was reality. People who play games, who fake love, who talk loud but move small. And suddenly, they miss you. Not just your body, not just the idea of you, but your presence. Your mind, your soul, the way you made them feel safe, even when the world was burning, the way you listened, even when you were breaking inside, the way you loved them so loudly it drowned out their doubts. They miss that. And now they chase shadows, shadows that don't reply, shadows that ghost, shadows that aren't you. And you're not even angry anymore. That's what messes them up the most. You're just distant, cold, unavailable. Not out of spite, but out of survival. You've learned that peace is more valuable than attention. That being chosen half-heartedly is worse than being alone. So now you sit with your silence like it's armor. And baby, that silence is bulletproof. They can't touch you with their guilt. They can't bait you with fake apologies. Because you've seen behind the curtain. You know the game. And once you know it, you can't unsee it. You can't unlove someone who never really valued your love. You can't unbreak a bond that was one-sided. So now, you don't fight for clarity. You are the clarity. You don't beg to be understood. You let your absence explain everything. Because here's what they'll never tell you. They felt the shift. They noticed when your "how was your day" disappeared. when your check-in stopped, when your good mornings went silent. But their ego, it told them you'd be back, that you were just emotional, that they still had time. And by the time they realized they didn't, you were already a different person. You didn't move on to prove anything. You moved on because your soul couldn't breathe in their chaos anymore. And now they sit in that same chaos, alone, wishing they had treated you better when they had the chance. Regret is a heavy chain, and they wear it well now. Every place they go, they see something that reminds them of you. A song, a street, a laugh, and they flinch because they know what they lost. Not in theory, in reality. They lost someone who would have gone to war for them, who saw their flaws and loved them anyway, who believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. And now, they can't even get a text back. They're blocked from the very soul they thought they could keep on a leash. And that's the punishment. Not revenge, not anger, but peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need closure, that doesn't need a sorry, just silence. Beautiful, deafening silence. And what you need to remember every time you think of looking back is that you're not punishing them. You're protecting you. You gave them chance after chance. You handed them a love people pray for, and they threw it away. So, don't second guess your silence. Don't question your growth, because they don't miss you. They miss the access to you. And access is a privilege, one they abused, one they lost, and one they'll never get back. You know what's funny? Not ha, ha, funny. Tragic funny. It's how they used to roll their eyes when you tried to talk about what hurt you. How they used to shrug off your pain like it was just background noise to their ego. You were always too sensitive, right? Too dramatic. You were doing too much. Nah. The truth is, you were just real. And they weren't ready for that. You were showing up raw, honest, bleeding honesty while they were playing games with masks on. You were trying to build a future. They were counting how many options they had. So when you cracked, when your voice started shaking, when your patience started slipping, they didn't see that as a warning sign. They saw it as weakness. And that's where they messed up. Because once a heart like yours turns cold, it doesn't come back. Not for them. Not for anybody who held your soul with dirty hands. See, you gotta understand. Your silence now, it speaks volumes. It screams through the cracks of their new relationships. It echoes in their late night thoughts. And no matter how much they try to pretend they're good now, no matter how much they post and flex and fake smile, they feel your absence. They feel it when something good happens, and they instinctively go to tell you, only to remember they can't. They feel it when they're having a breakdown, and they crave your words. The ones that used to heal, uplift, guide, but now those words are reserved for someone else. Someone who will actually value them. Or maybe for no one. Maybe you're keeping them to yourself now. And that's okay. Because not every healed wound needs to be shared again. Some scars are sacred. And here's the darkness they won't admit to anyone. They miss the way you loved them. Because nobody loves like you did. Nobody checks in the way you did. Nobody notices the small stuff. The way they changed their tone when they were upset. The way their eyes looked when they were lying. You knew them. Not just the version they showed the world. The real them. And you loved that version. Deeply. Fearlessly. And that's what burns them now. They're surrounded by people who only want their surface, who only know their filtered face, not their soul. And they remember that you saw all their ugly and stayed until you didn't. Until you realized that loving someone that deeply shouldn't feel like self-destruction. You gave them a rare kind of love, and now they're out here trying to replace it with distractions, new people, parties, stories. But nothing works, because once someone's tasted loyalty in its purest form, everything else feels plastic, feels empty. And that's what they're choking on now. Emptiness. Because they had someone who made their flaws feel safe. And they tossed it aside like it was nothing. So let them scroll through old texts. Let them replay old voice notes. Let them whisper your name in a room that no longer holds your presence. That's not your concern anymore. You're not theirs to miss. You're not a comfort zone to run back to when the world gets cold. You're gone. And what's left is just memories and silence that roars louder than any argument ever could. So don't romanticize going back. Don't confuse missing someone with needing them. You miss the idea, the hope, the potential. But reality? Reality already showed you who they are. Already showed you what they do when you're vulnerable. And no amount of nostalgia is worth reliving that pain. You walked away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself. And that's the kind of love they never saw coming. That's what haunts them now, not your anger, not your goodbye, but the fact that you finally put yourself first. That you finally chose peace over proving your worth. And now, let that be the story. Not one of bitterness, not one of revenge, but one of survival. You survived their indifference. You survived their games. You survived the slow death of being taken for granted. And in that survival, you were reborn. Not as who you used to be, but as someone they can never touch again. And here's what they'll never say out loud. You were the best thing they ever had, and they didn't realize it until it was far too late. Because back when you were all in, back when you were giving them parts of you that you couldn't even afford to give yourself, they were busy chasing noise. busy looking for excitement in emptiness. They thought your presence was guaranteed. They confused your loyalty with weakness. And the saddest part? You were so deep in love, so committed to them, that you would have fought the world with one hand behind your back if it meant keeping them safe. But they didn't see that. They didn't want depth. They wanted attention. And when you gave them oceans, they went swimming in puddles. Now, they're drowning in guilt, trying to sip from dry wells. And you're not even looking back. Not out of hatred, not out of pride, but because you've evolved into someone who finally understands that being everything to the wrong person is the fastest way to lose yourself. They miss your light now. That's the truth. They miss how you used to bring warmth to cold days. How your words had a way of calming their chaos. You weren't just a lover. You were a healer. A safe space. A place they could collapse into without shame. And they ruined that. They contaminated that peace. Turned your softness into something they used for leverage. They tested how far they could push, how much you could take, and still expected you to stay. But pain rewires people. And now they're looking for that same energy in people who don't even care if they eat. They're texting ghosts hoping for a heartbeat, and all they hear back is silence. The kind of silence that echoes louder than all your I love yous ever did. The kind that reminds them they had you and lost you. Not because you changed overnight, but because they mistook consistency for convenience. But here's where it gets real dark. They needed to lose you to understand you. Some people only learn through loss. You could have screamed your worth from the rooftops, and they still wouldn't have heard it. But your absence? Oh, that hit different. That silence after the storm. That's when it all made sense. Every time they think about reaching out, they hesitate. Not because they don't want to, but because they know they don't deserve access anymore. And you're not bitter. You're not waiting. You're not hoping for a redo. Because once you rebuild yourself from the rubble they left you in, once you stitch your heart back together piece by piece, you don't hand it back to the person who tore it apart. And you know what? Let them tell people you changed. Let them say, you're not the same anymore. Good. That's the point. You're not the same. You're stronger now, sharper, more careful. You don't let just anyone sit at your table anymore. You're not interested in proving your worth to people who treat your presence like background noise. You've seen what happens when you give the wrong people the best parts of you. And now you're reserved, selective. And that's power. Because real strength isn't in how much you give. It's in knowing when to stop, when to walk away, when to protect your peace like it's sacred. Because it is. They'll miss the way you looked at them. Like they were the only person in the room. Like they mattered more than the noise. But now, they sit in rooms full of people and still feel alone. Because they don't have you. They don't have that version of you who would have set yourself on fire just to keep them warm. That version is gone. And the one that stands in its place, this version only burns for purpose, not for people who can't see the flame. So, no, they don't get another chance. Not because you're cruel, but because they already showed you what they do with your love. And you're not in the business of handing second chances to people who treat hearts like toys. So when they whisper your name in regret, when they scroll through your photos, trying to see if your smile still looks the same, when they type out a message only to delete it again, they'll realize the hardest part isn't losing you, it's knowing they'll never meet anyone like you again. And that's a lifetime sentence they gave themselves, without parole. And what eats them alive the most isn't just your absence. It's the version of themselves they were when they had you. Because let's be real, when they were with you, they stood taller, they smiled wider, they moved like they mattered. Why? Because you believed in them. You poured into them. You reminded them every day that they were worth something, even when they didn't see it. You didn't just love them, you elevated them. You saw the broken pieces and treated them like art. But people like that, they get too comfortable. They start thinking that kind of energy is normal, that it's guaranteed. So they start slacking, start disrespecting, start pulling away, thinking you'll always be there, until you weren't. Until they looked around and realized they weren't glowing anymore, because you were the light. And now that you're gone, they're back to walking in shadows. And it's cold there. See, most people don't want love. They want attention. They want someone to chase them, to fight for them, to prove they're worth it. But when someone actually shows up with real love, raw, pure, loyal love, they panic. They sabotage. Because deep down, they don't believe they deserve it. And that's what happened with you. You gave them everything, and they responded with fear, with pride, with ego. And now that they're alone, they replay the moments they shrugged you off, lied to your face, made you question your own value. And trust me, it haunts them, because now they realize you were rare, one of one, and they threw it away, trying to chase what? Cheap thrills? Empty validation from people who couldn't hold a conversation, let alone a heart? They thought they were upgrading. They thought you were replaceable. And now, every room they walk into feels smaller. Every new person they meet feels hollow. Because none of them laugh like you did. None of them challenge their mind like you did. None of them see them like you did. And that's what regret looks like. It's not always crying in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's silence after a joke they wish they could text you. It's standing in a crowd and still feeling alone. It's waking up next to someone else and realizing they don't make you feel alive. That's the reality they chose. That's the weight they carry now. And you? You don't even look over your shoulder anymore. Because healing, real healing, it's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about accepting that it did and choosing yourself anyway. It's about realizing that being soft in a world that chews people up doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Because someone who can survive betrayal and still walk with love in their heart, that's someone who can't be broken twice. That's who you are now. You're not the victim. You're not the fool. You're not the person they tried to paint you as. You're the one who rose quietly, slowly, relentlessly. You're the one who turned your pain into purpose. Let them miss you. Let them feel it in their chest when they see someone who kind of looks like you. Let them wonder if you still think about them, if your heart ever aches the way theirs does now. You don't owe them answers. You don't owe them closure. Some stories are better left unfinished, so they echo forever. And that's what you are now. An echo. A memory too sharp to forget, too painful to remember. And listen closely. The moment you stop chasing, that's the moment the tables turned. That's when they started noticing the weight of everything you carry. That's when they started replaying every missed call, every unanswered message, every look you gave that screamed, "I'm trying." And now it's too late, because the version of you who used to try, dead. The version who used to wait, gone. All that's left is someone who knows exactly what they bring to the table and isn't afraid to eat alone anymore. So, no, you're not bitter. You're not angry. You're done. And when they finally realize what they lost, it won't be your name they whisper in regret. It'll be their own, because they had it all, and they ruined it with their own hands. You ever notice how quiet it gets once you stop explaining yourself? Once you stop trying to convince someone of your worth? Once you stop begging them to see what's right in front of them? Everything just settles. It's like the storm ends. Not because the sky's clear, but because you finally walk out from under the clouds. You stop hoping they'll bring an umbrella and realize you've been drowning in your own patience. And that silence, that's peace. That's the kind of silence that used to scare you because it meant the end. But now it's freedom. Now it means you no longer depend on someone else's ability to love you right. Now it means you finally realized that loving them harder was never going to make them better. It was just going to keep killing you slowly. And the second you stopped trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed, you started saving yourself. They didn't expect that. They expected you to break, to lose your identity without them, to chase, to cry, to come back with your head down and your heart still bleeding. That's what they'd seen before, right? That's what you did every time they left you hanging. Every time they made you feel like an afterthought, but not this time. This time you didn't chase, you didn't beg, you just left everything exactly where they dropped it and walked. That shook them. That silence, it slapped harder than any argument ever could. Because now they're sitting with all the things they never had the guts to say out loud, and no one to listen. Now they're realizing that your peace wasn't just quiet. It was presence. It was your energy, your support, your soul wrapped around their chaos, holding it all together. And without you, their world's falling apart in slow motion. You were their anchor, and they treated you like a burden. You were their mirror, and they shattered you, trying to avoid their own reflection. But now that the dust's settled, now that they've tested the waters with people who can't even spell loyalty, they get it. They feel it in their chest when they see someone laugh the way you did. When they scroll past a song that used to play in the background while you sat on the phone late at night, calming their storms. When they wear the hoodie you left behind and it still smells like a home they burned down. But they'll never say that. They'll never confess the weight. They'll post pictures, crack jokes, pretend they're fine. But that's all it is. Pretend. Because no one with peace in their chest checks your story every morning. No one who moved on keeps mentioning your name in every argument with the new person. They're haunted, not healed. And the ghost is you. And you, don't you dare dim your new light for someone who couldn't handle your old one. Don't let nostalgia trick you into reopening a door that slammed itself shut on your heart. Remember the nights you couldn't sleep, the tears you wiped silently because you didn't want to seem too much. The times you planned your words carefully, walking on eggshells around someone who couldn't even give you basic respect. Don't forget that version of yourself, not because you're going back to it, but because that's the version you survived. That's the version they're praying comes back. But it won't. Because now you've learned that love isn't sacrifice. It's balance. It's not about losing yourself to keep someone else intact. It's about meeting in the middle. And if they can't meet you there, they can stand alone in the silence they created. And trust me, they feel that silence. Every time they think about reaching out, but remember the last thing they said. Every time they open your chat and stare at the last scene, knowing it's never lighting up again. Every time they try to talk to someone new and realize no one makes them feel the way you did. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You didn't play games. You didn't run hot and cold. You were consistent, present, devoted, and they threw it away looking for distractions. And now they're realizing that what they thought was normal in you was actually exceptional. And exceptional doesn't come around twice. So let them live with that. Let them wonder if you still think about them, still miss them, still ache, but don't answer. Because the version of you they miss isn't a person anymore. It's a memory. And memories, they don't return calls. They don't reply to apologies. They just exist like ghosts, quiet, untouchable, and eternal.